Thank you for coming to the premiere episode of our Wutus channel. And where, let me remind you what it stands for. Wutus is we have to own our own shit, but not the typical shit. It's an acronym. The S stands for scalability because we don't just want to start a business, we want to grow a business. H stands for honoring the ancestors whose shoulders we stand upon. The Y is you are your brand. A client is going to buy you before they buy any product or service that you have. And the T is for tenacity, because being an entrepreneur is not for the faint of heart. With that being said, let me introduce our special guest, Joseph Harland II, President and Managing Broker of a la Carte Commercial Capital. How you doing today, good brother?
I am doing fabulous, brother. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure, my pleasure. So, a la carte commercial capital. Can you give us an overview of what that is?
Absolutely. So, a la carte commercial capital is a commercial brokerage firm, and we focus on sourcing and placing capital for business owners and investors. And a la carte commercial capital is actually a subsidiary of a la carte investments, which is our commercial real estate brokerage firm, where we focus on finding commercial properties and representing tenants and buyers in that commercial space. So, each firm kind of plays off of the other, but the commercial capital is there to be a supplement to the parent firm, but also to help buyers and investors and business owners gain access to capital.
Okay, perfect. So, with that being said, what does owning your own shit personally and professionally mean to you?
It means the world. It means being in control and being able to direct resources as I see fit, and that will benefit areas that I deem relevant. Right? I can pick and choose the subcontractors, the employees. I can direct those resources, that I want to be in my community and beyond. I have a say so in that. Being an employee, you don't have a say so in that. And that doesn't mean to exclude other groups or other communities, but it starts, within. I have that choice. I have that power, and that's what it means to me. And I take that with great responsibility, and I take it to heart.
So, in starting this entrepreneurial journey, what was your biggest fear that you had to overcome?
Well, we're all afraid of failure, but I was, I think, probably too young at the time to even think that was possible. You think you're invincible at the time. Before I got into the commercial real estate and commercial capital space, the first business I bought was actually a franchise. I was a restaurant owner, and I saw being a franchisee as a pathway forward to entrepreneurship, which is still a great route for many people. But at the end of the day, I felt like I was buying a job. Um, and replacing that for another. But that was a great experience. I learned a lot from it, and that was in the early 2000s when I bought my first business, and that was very empowering.
And see, you just made a hell of a distinction because what some people don't know, there's a difference between being self-employed and a business owner. So, yeah, and so you say buying a job. A lot of times we go out here and we actually buy a job because if we're not there, it doesn't, the movement doesn't happen and the business is stagnant. So you're not a business owner, you just self-employed. So yeah, that was perfect. So what is one of the things that you wish you would have known before launching your business? One of the biggest things you wish you would have known.
Oh, I'm gonna jump all over this question. One thing I wish I would have acted on and known more about was to buy an existing business to scale and grow, as opposed to starting from scratch. When I bought my franchise, I paid the franchise fee, I got all the training, I found the space, it was white shell space, we built it out, everything was brand new. every knife, the refrigerators, all the equipment, everything brand new, right? It never occurred to me that there was someone else that maybe was retiring or wanted to move on for whatever reason that I could buy something that's already had a customer base, already had employees, already had books and records, that I could go in and improve and build upon. And if I could go back in time, I would have done that as opposed to starting from scratch. So those that are watching this, there are channels and brokers that can help you find various businesses that are already existing. And with the number of baby boomers that are retiring and they don't have kids that want to take over these businesses, they're ripe for takeover. And they're already successful. You can look at their books and records, you can assess it. And by the way, lenders like that too. So it's a little easier to finance and get up and running as opposed to starting from scratch.
See, now that in itself was a priceless gem you just dropped, and I hope you guys caught on to that. We don't have to recreate the wheel. So yeah, that right there was a jewel. That was definitely a jewel. So, in your experience, what came first? The money, the power, or the respect?
Mm, the money. The money came. And by the way, it was that was a slow ride, for me. Many business owners want to jump out a little too early. They're under-resourced, and that's a recipe for failure. So I had to work my way up through the corporate ranks. I had to, squirrel away some savings and a 401k. Um, uh, and by the way, I got to give a huge shout out to my wife, right? I chose a good partner, and yeah, that could be another part of part of the conversation. But having a good partner in your household that supports you and backs you up is definitely part of that. But the money came before the launch,
Mm.
right? Yeah, we had to get our affairs in order and set our household and get that on a solid foundation and footing before, taking that step. And then once people saw, oh, this guy's for real, he actually did it, right? Then the respect came. I was respected in the community that I was operating in. And with that, maybe a little power, perceived or real. But I was not a power hungry kind of guy, right? The money and respect. If you do respectable things, the money and the power, those other things will follow.
So, how has capital or access to capital or lack of access to capital affected your growth?
Mm. Well, first of all, it's everything. My first professional job right out of college was with a major captive finance firm. And that's fancy words for automotive financing, right?
Okay.
And so I learned even as an intern in college the power of having good credit and what that means. And I saw people get either approved or declined for auto loans, home mortgages because of that. So that was one of the first things I made sure was rock solid. And that gave me a footing, having good credit to get access to, auto loans, and subsequently, first mortgages, which was very key, by the way. But by the first home I bought was actually an investment property that we wanted to flip before 9/11. And I became a landlord because the market tanked and we were about to go to war, and I'm stuck with this property. But but God has a funny sense of humor because that bolstered my net worth on my balance sheet. So when I applied for a loan to get this franchise, I had an asset. I had cash, but I also had this asset, and I had good credit. And that was my pathway. That gave me access to the capital markets to be able to get my first SBA loan and purchase my first business. Um, so now, cash flow is another matter. So the lack of cash flow can uh, hurt your ability to grow. So I had dreams and grandeur of, having, 50 locations and, all of this, being in the restaurant business, which is so difficult to do.
Hmm.
It's really a day-to-day, week-to-week, kind of business, and margins are a little, small, right? And you're working off of, cash flow. So you're going back to the question that you asked about the lack of, it wasn't the lack, but it's how well does that flow? Week to week, you got to pay employees, you got to pay sales and use tax, you got to pay your lease, you got to pay your vendors, and if the cash flow isn't there, you're gonna struggle in that arena. And so that's that. Yep.
So what sacrifices have you made that people don't see on the outside? They see this well-polished product now, and they just assume, how we do, we count other people's money. Oh, he got it. He's killing them. But what sacrifices have you made in order to position yourself where you are now?
Wow. Going back to the early days, right? I was a young father at the time, and the first is sacrificing, family. So you're not around for your kids. That was the first sign that I needed to exit the restaurant business because I was not going to alienate my young son at the time, who's now 19 and a sophomore at Morehouse College, doing extremely well, I might add.
Congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you. Very proud of him. So uh, that was a sacrifice. Sacrifice your time and your family. You're working 14-hour days. Everything is on you. They said that, heavy is the head that wears the crown. So, some
Correct.
of the parties and social functions, you can't do those because you've got to be there. You've got to turn key, right? Some of the vacations that you wanted to take, we can't do that right now, right? Either because you need to maintain that cash flow, right, and pour back into the business versus let me just go buy some luxury cars and some trinkets, right? So that was a sacrifice, in and of itself. And then those early days, going back to that rock, my wife of 23 years, she was holding it down while I was trying to get this off the ground. And if
Mhm.
you don't have a supporting spouse or partner, that can make it difficult if there's drama at home. And we didn't have that. So we were all rowing in the same direction. And that's a sacrifice that she made too. Her husband wasn't at home. I was gone all the time, trying to have dinner and the business or the employees are calling. Nowadays, it would be, the text messages or the business trip when you had something else planned, but, the business calls. So you have to make those decisions and sacrifices. But I think we both understand that and we accept it and, we get through it.
So how did you stay motivated when the money wasn't coming in and the doors wasn't opening?
Failure is a hell of a motivator. Okay. I just could not let that happen. Maybe it's ego, but that brings something to mind that many entrepreneurs don't consider. We put all of our thoughts and energy into starting a business, right? No one considers what an exit plan looks like, right? Just because you exit the business doesn't mean you failed. But as much as you're going to put into starting the business, you need to think, what is the exit plan? If I had it for 50 years, I want to retire. What's the business valuation? Who's going to take it over? Was it going to be my son? Right? Is it going to be a third person? Do I just close doors? What does that look like? That exit strategy. So that must be a part of entrepreneur's business plan. Getting started and how you exit are equally important.
And you hit on something that what I learned later on, because my background was wealth management. I was with one of the large wirehouses, and that's what was kind of iffy and shaky for me is being one of one a lot of times in those industries, and it's who was going to make you a part of their succession plan, who was going to allow you to buy their book of business, who were going to want to partner up with you if they didn't see you had already amassed tons of AUM. And so that was one of the difficulties, finding someone to partner up with, who you can sync up and link up with. And then you guys shared same interests, vision, same community goals, and things of that nature. So, yeah, that is a very, very integral part that I think a lot of us we look at the start, but don't look at the exit. So, yeah, that's a critical piece that we need to stay focused on. So, in this time of more awareness being brought to the mental health space. As an entrepreneur, how do you keep your peace being a business owner with all the ups and downs that you have to go through?
Mm. I exercise is and health as we're talking about is so key. We chatted briefly this morning, and when you called, I was coming from back from the gym. So I have a trainer. I'm there 3 days a week. I stay on top of all of those appointments and try to do all of the right things from a health perspective within reason. And I think that that helps, as a release, you know, for your mental health when you have good physical health.
Hmm.
And that's so important, right? I don't want my exit plan to be triggered by, health issues, but that's something certainly you have to take account for. And then, other things that bring you some joy in your off time. For me, it may be on my smokers and or playing around the golf or, watching the game. But try to find some balance. And enjoy the journey along the way. Sometimes it's imbalance, and that's okay. But doing those things along the way, during the course of the day, I'm gonna carve out 2 hours for me today. I'm gonna go catch a movie. Whatever the case may be. So, but it starts for me. Just I have to exercise. I have to.
Okay, that's great. So let me ask you this. What limited belief, if at any, did you have to unlearn to level up?
Ooh, what to unlearn? That's a great question. You kind of stumped me there because it's not something you really think about. I would say one of the areas that I probably would improve upon is surrounding myself with people that have better marketing. So I'm a finance guy. So, you know, some of the habits that you can form from a marketing perspective probably needed to unlearn and redo and learn some new things from a marketing perspective, which, we're in a very dynamic space and it's fast changing, right? And so I need to be open and flexible and that's stuck. Um, in that old thinking. And, surrounding yourselves by youthful people, I think can help with that. But you have to be open to hear and receive those ideas and learn some new skills.
So let me bring out the elephant in the room now.
Yeah.
Uh, how did you overcome the stereotypes of most and some from a lot of our African Americans that I don't do business with African Americans? And how did you have to overcome that that challenge of us as individuals saying that we don't want to do business with one another?
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit to say that that's not my challenge, that's their challenge. If you are doing things at a high level, if you are providing a service at a high level, it will shine and see through. And sometimes you have to show them,
Mhm.
right? We were raised in an era where it was understood that you had to be two, three times better than the next person and overcome, and we still do, perceptions, right? There's a Whenever I travel, I'm amazed at the response I get if I'm in a suit like I am today versus joggers and sweats.
Right.
And the response that you get from travelers and from whether it's hotel staff or flights because of that, and they're making perceptions, and I was like, I could be the wealthiest person in the room or the brokest person, right? But how you carry yourself, I think, matters. Um, so overcoming that is the first thing, of that is how you present yourself. Being here today, what you see, they're gonna see you first, and then you speak, and then I seek to listen and provide, like I said, that service. I did it in the restaurant business. I always made sure that I had one of the highest health scores that you could have. It was always clean. I just had a standard. And when you become the standard, when that's the standard, that's the norm. And you don't break it. And people respect that. And we had a good client base because of it.
It's funny you mentioned that. I had this conversation with my youngest grandson yesterday, and I was telling him exactly what you said. I said, if I walk into a store and I got my sweatpants on or jeans on sometimes, and especially from other communities, but in general, you get, oh, hey man, how can I help you? Well, what's going on? But then when you come adorned like this, it's sir. How may I assist you, sir? Is there anything you need, sir? It's a different perception. And so sometimes you get the pushback from some of our younger generation that states, well, it shouldn't matter how I look or how I dress. You should treat me well. As we know, life isn't fair and perception is reality. So I'm glad you hit on that. Now, piggybacking off of that, do you feel a responsibility in hiring our people as well as serving our people?
Oh, 100%. One of the nice things about being an entrepreneur is to the ability, if you are going to hire, right, whether it's an employee or a contractor, I can pick and choose who that is. Brokers that are looking to get into business, that seek me out, I'm in a position to give them an opportunity, right? They don't have to go to the top schools. I just need to see a level of intelligence. I can teach you, right? I just need to hear from them and speak to them and be in a place to give them an opportunity. I'll tell you a quick story.
Okay.
I had an investor reach out to me, found me on LinkedIn or on online, and they were moving here. She was moving here out of state and was thinking about buying a strip center. It was a retail center, and wanted my opinion and advice. And I looked at it, and it had one tenant and one space is vacant. And I said, "Do you have a copy of the lease?" We looked over the lease, and after reviewing it, I said, "This is a bad deal." She appreciated that. And she said, "Well, I want to learn more about real estate. So I used to be licensed in another state." I says, "Well, you can get licensed here as long as you get a residential license in Georgia. You can transfer it here, take some credits, and then you can get into commercial space." And so she appreciated that. So several months went by, 4 or 5 months, and then I got a call back from her, and we had a great conversation. And she said, "Well, she said, how do I get started?" And I began to tell her about, firms and how to interview and what to look for and, how things move in circles here in Atlanta. And she paused a moment and she said something that was a gut punch. She says, "So you won't hire me?" I was like, "Ooh, that hurt." Right? I'm in a position to help this young person,
Wow.
this young lady who's looking for an opportunity, and I was overlooking her, right? I says I need to bring myself back down and reevaluate. If someone is looking for that opportunity, they're educated and have the ability to, you just need to sponsor sometimes. And this person went on to join our firm, did very well. She ultimately left our firm, a smaller firm, went to a larger brokerage firm and got into property management, got several certifications. So I felt good about that and what she was able to accomplish, all because I gave her an opportunity and I had the power to do so.
See, and I really hope that our audience are picking up on these Jews. You said a sponsor. You had to sponsor. A lot of us, we grew up with the term of you need to get a mentor. You need to get a mentor. But let's make a difference in understanding a sponsor and a mentor. The sponsor is the individual that's going to speak on your behalf when you're not in the room. And most major decisions are being made when you're not in the room. Should someone hire you? Should you get that promotion? Should you get that raise? All of these decisions are going to be made when you're not in the room. So it's critical to have someone speaking on your behalf and being that critical sponsor. That was fantastic. So, how do you navigate being one of the only ones or the only one in probably most rooms you go into in that commercial realtor space?
Wow, it can be difficult. Now, I will say, being in Atlanta, we're kind of spoiled. Atlanta is a unique place for entrepreneurs,
Certainly.
for Black middle class. It's just unique in its history and its culture. With schools here, I always felt comfortable in my own city versus other cities that you may visit. Having said that, in the commercial real estate and capital space, there's still a lack of representation oftentimes, and you have to go in these rooms, and sometimes you get the cold shoulders, from folk, but others are willing to engage, and those are the ones that I'm seeking out. I can't focus and worry about who's not. I'm looking for the one who is, and building those relationships across, like I said, all areas and all people. And there's some very good people that are there, but it's a little harder for us, to find it oftentimes. Um, and so, yeah, that's just something, that we've just dealt with. You know, we're almost accustomed to it, which is kind of sad. Kind of used to it. But Atlanta, there's more representation in the room than you're probably going to find in rooms in other cities. I would say.
And
I'm very
so,
comfortable.
and so, what does Black excellence to mean to you in your everyday grind?
It's just the standard. You expect it to be excellent. I was raised in it. Uh, I'll tell you this. So I grew up, in a single parent household, but my mother kept us in the church. Our church it wasn't a mega church, if you want to call it that, for the time. And Atlanta has a lot of great churches, but there's a lot of greatness that came out of those churches during the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s, right? When you talk about the Black middle class, and you can there's lower middle, middle, and upper middle, right? And in our communities, you mingled and interfaced, you know, throughout all of those. And in those churches, we saw the deacons that were business owners in the community. I saw insurance agents. I saw gas station owners. I saw businessmen. These are the leaders in the church. These were the men I saw. They had on a suit every Sunday, right? Like, that was just, it was the standard. That's the way you carried yourself when you went places, and they made sure that you knew that. So, and education was the pathway forward with that. So, being educated through HBCUs, for me specifically, you were around and they spoke about excellence. So you can become what you see. And that's what I saw. And it wasn't unusual to be around it. So I, for me, I just had to figure out, well, which direction do I want to go in? Because you can be great. You've seen it. And the expectation was, now you get to take it to the next level.
So, if you could go back and speak to your younger self, what advice would you give your younger self
Wow.
as it pertains especially to business ownership?
Well, one was, as we talked about earlier, was buying an existing business. Didn't know that was a thing until much and much later. I always knew real estate was a vehicle pathway to prosperity and wealth. So I bought my first property in the 90s. I wish we could have, bought it when I was in college. Bought a duplex or something of that nature. But real estate wasn't on my radar at the time. Um, I wish I would have had a more open mind in terms of the other areas of finance, such as investment banking. So I was on the credit side and commercial lending side, but the investment banking side, really piques my interest now. I would have, gone back and says, hey, maybe take a look at this route, whether it's Wall Street or what have you. But I think that was an era. If I could go back, I would say, hey, man, let's go this way. Let's try this out.
And so when it's all said and done, what do you want to be said about your legacy?
Oh, that's great. Obviously, a successful businessman, one that cares about people in the community. That you can say, when I encountered Joseph Harland, he treated me right. He gave me an opportunity, and he believed in me. And to have someone be able to speak your name and speak it in a good light is is priceless, right? If you run over people and you make a ton of money, no one will care.
And last question, and or my second to last question, I see you have that phenomenal pin on you that represents Kappa Alpha Psi, which happens to be the world's greatest fraternity, by the way. I really appreciate that. And so, one message you would want the audience to walk away with after hearing your story.
Well, number one is don't be afraid to act and implement a plan. So come up with your plan, how to get in, how to exit, right? And to take action. I hear so many people have dreams of things they want to do and they never act on it, right? We all know what the wealthiest place on earth is, right? The wealthiest place on earth is the graveyard.
All, all the dead dreams, all the ideas that never manifested, correct, that never got implemented.
You're going to become what you think about. So, write it down on paper and make an action plan. Think on it and put it out there. But you have to act on it. Faith without works is dead.
Phenomenal. And that's how we'll wrap it up. I want to thank you. I want to thank Joseph Harlan II, President, Managing Broker of a la carte Commercial Capital, for leading us off with our premiere episode. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you and have a great day. Take care.
Oh, thank you for having us. Thank you.
You're welcome.